cannot win the election.
Taken the first right away, they will take the second right away.
Okay, a very good evening to you all. My name is Fezuguhle Mtonti and I'm going to be your chairperson for the evening. As we mark 20 years since the first democratic elections, South Africans are seeing a changing political landscape and a vastly different political electorate. Although this year will be the highest number of registered voters in our history, young people are still seen as apathetic, apolitical and disinterested in their political future. Tonight, we as the Oppidan Press would like to challenge that perception, and I have with me this evening a panel of political representatives. From the African National Congress, Mr. Mbonile Nisi. From the African Christian Democratic Party, MP Sherilyn Dudley. From Congress of the People, Ms. Nosipho Blakey. From Gang, Mr. Philip Mechanic. From the United Congress, Mr. Mluleki George. From the Democratic Alliance, MP Kevin Milam. From the African People's Congress, Ms. Olwethu Botman. From the United Democratic Movement, Mr. Mncindisi Filton. We also have an in-studio audience consisting of student leaders from various campus societies and organizations who have been invited to participate in the Barrett Lecture Theatre are further students, staff and community members, all eager to engage with this evening's discussion. We welcome you all and thank you for taking this project so seriously. Our aim is to encourage critical thinking and discussion going into this election based on the assumptions that students have engaged to some extent with what political parties have put out there and thus have some questions. And so the first question is, why should we vote for you? Bearing in mind that you each have 1 minute to respond, can the candidate from the ANC please start us off?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you have said, my name is Mbonile Nisi. First and foremost, I think it will be appropriate for us to pass our condolences to the tragedy that we have heard that it has happened here at Rhodes University. And we hope that justice will be done. Ladies and gentlemen, as the African National Congress, we believe that it is important for all young people in this country to vote for the ANC because it is the ANC that has managed in fighting against apartheid and dismantled that system. Hence, we have created one single Department of Education. After, under apartheid, we had 3 departments of education. Equally, we've invested in the education of our children. As we speak, we are spending 12 billion as the government of the ANC in education in this country as we speak in this year. We strongly believe that our policies are quite important in that even early
Okay, we're going to have to cut you off there. Okay, can we please have the ACDP panelist?
The African Christian Democratic Party offers South Africa a hope for a strong, prosperous and purpose-driven nation and a future for our children. We are a party based on Christian democratic principles and we have the freedom to approach issues from a biblical worldview perspective. The African Christian Democratic Party is committed to a shared future and we value unity and diversity. We will protect family integrity and religious freedom, which is very important to us and we believe very important to South Africa on the whole. We are passionate about addressing the poverty and inequalities in South Africa, and that we will do through targeted interventions, social interventions, and also through education. Education from early childhood development right through to tertiary education, where we believe that no child who has the ability should not have the access to tertiary education. We will also
Okay, thank you very much. Can we please have the panelist from COPE?
Thank you very much. And good evening to everybody. COPE has been born to uphold and defend the Constitution and democracy of South Africa. COPE strongly believes in a transparent, honest, accountable, and free of corruption government. The people of South Africa want a government of the people, by the people, more importantly, with the people who elected and voted for it. COPE strongly believes that the voices of the people must be heard and listened to. And COPE can transform South Africa to a country where all people are free of poverty and not depend on handouts, especially during the time of elections, where the rich are becoming richer and the people who are poor are becoming poorer. So if you can vote COPE, you can really know that you will have your constitution will be
Okay, unfortunately, we'll have to cut you off
defended
right over there. Can we please have the Gang panelist speak to us?
A small town university in a valley surrounded by farms, looked down upon by its big city counterparts. The university of which I speak is called Stanford, and the valley is called Silicon Valley, the world's greatest concentration of high-tech industry. Why could that not happen here? Gang's plan for entrepreneurship, education, empowerment, effective government and employment comes together to make this town and this university work the way they should. Why is Rhodes not the epicenter of innovative enterprise like any great university? Why is our town not a hub of high-tech skills, effective government and entrepreneurship? Why is it next to impossible to start a business in this town unless you have political connections? Empowerment and education. Why in a university town can we not raise our township schools to a higher standard? We have students from 50 countries, but hardly any from our own township schools. With the right program, our Donkey Valley could be the Silicon Valley of South Africa. Gang has a plan to make our...
Okay, thank you very much. We'd like to ask the UNICO representative to speak to us.
Good evening to everybody. To save time, I'll go straight to the point. UNICO observed that South Africa is plagued with a plethora of political, economic and social challenges relating to increasing poverty, inequality, high levels of unemployment, a widening gap between the poor and the rich, exclusion of people who are not politically connected to the ruling party in all societal productive activities like employment opportunities, promotions, benefit from government tenders, and so forth. UNICA is committed to fight and eradicate poverty, to create decent jobs by using our natural resources and other appropriate opportunities to create economic development and growth, to protect all citizens, because at the moment, crime is going out of hand. Free, compulsory, and quality education will be there if you vote for the United Congress.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. We'd like to ask our DA candidate to then respond to us.
South Africans across the country are telling us that they are ready for change. Change towards jobs, change towards quality education, change towards clean government, and change towards excellence in service delivery. We're grateful for the freedom we got in 1994. Our lives improved. We made progress. But the ANC eisafaan. The idea of a better life for all has become a better life for some, and opportunities only go to those with political connections. Today there are more than 1.4 million additional people unemployed than there were when Zuma took office in 2009. Economic growth has dropped to 2%, not nearly enough to start building a more inclusive economy. With your help, the DA will bring change to South Africa. We will grow the economy and create jobs. We will cut corruption and fearlessly tackle crime. We will improve the delivery of housing and basic services through clean, efficient government, as we have done in the Western Cape.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Can we please have the APC?
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would believe that we're the only party whose manifestos can be able to explain to the electorate as to what we have done over the 5 years after being voted in 2009. And we commit ourselves to transform the economy to serve the people throughout the state intervention and socialization, promote the projection of the African personality, fight inequality to eradicate absolute poverty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll move on to the UDM.
Thank you. Positioned as we are on the center left on the political map in South Africa, this is what we will see as a form of transformation once we go into power come the 7th of May. We'll address the democracy deficiency that we see in the Eastern Cape. We would like to focus, particularly in the Eastern Cape, so that we become a model government. And we want to make the Eastern Cape one of the key economic growth areas in South Africa. In fact, we want to make it the fourth growing economy in South Africa. Insofar as the quality of life of its citizens, currently we have got 1.3 million people in the Eastern Cape who go without food almost daily, and we want to turn around that situation such that with those people, there's food security, there's education, local employment. And lastly, we want to be ensure that there's free education up to grade 12, and the very last point is that there'll be proper utilization of
Okay, thank you very
resources.
much. Thank you very much for your introductions. So the format of the debate from here is that the party representatives will have a discussion around 4 questions of concern of young people. Thereafter, we'll open the floor to our studio audience and then allow each party a closing statement. We're going to begin our conversation this evening on basic education. Here are a few thoughts on basic and tertiary education from some of our students.
I think they really should focus on every child in South Africa getting adequate education and adequate teachers to give them that education, so that when they leave, matric, they have enough to take them into varsity and take them to any other institution, and for them to be able to do whatever that they feel that they want to do.
I think education is the most important part of rebuilding this country to something else, or into a first world country. I think with the Eastern Cape's problem, the whole textbook saga, I think they need to invest more money and effort into schools and the Department of Education.
I think the state should be held accountable to paying for high-level education for people who come from not so privileged backgrounds, because if we want to produce young people who are well-rounded, we need for the state to be there supporting them. I know we have such things as NAFSAS and other bursaries, but they don't cater for everybody else.
I'm voting, and I will be voting for someone other than the ANC, because I think that a new party would do more for the education problem.
Quality education and the access thereto is crucial for any developing country. Last year's National Senior Certificate results showed an improvement from previous years. That said, thousands of schools in South Africa lack the infrastructure necessary to provide learners with the quality education which they are legally entitled to receive. There are over 400 mud schools in the Eastern Cape, many classrooms without adequate desks and chairs, and learners struggling to make through without the support of sufficient teaching and non-teaching staff. So our question to our panelists is twofold. 1, how do you improve the outcomes of basic education system? And 2, how do we account for the lack of basic infrastructure in a number of rural and township schools across the country, and how can the situation be remedied? Okay, so we're going to start our Q&A session with the panelists from the ANC.
Thank you very much. What we are doing at the moment as the ANC, as I've said earlier on, we are investing in education. We've got 3.5 million children in the early childhood development centers. We are making sure that those children, whilst they're from very poor families, we spend 16 rand in a child a day so that they can be fed in those schools. Those are not handouts. It's because these people are from very, very poor backgrounds. 2, we are making it a point throughout the Eastern Cape that we are changing the face of our schools. Hence, we are building schools throughout the country. Those 400 mud schools which are there, we are destroying them by building more. Hence, we are putting more money in basic education. Those mud schools were not created by ANC, but we take it as our responsibility to make sure that we change them so that we can have proper schools in the rural areas. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to the panelist from Agang.
Yes, well, 400 mud schools after 20 years, that's a good story. Agang is in favour of rapid replacement of mud schools by proper schools, and also quality education, which was not addressed by the previous panelist. It's partially a management issue. Schools that are well managed with good principals are getting good results even when the resources are very poor. Another part of it is building active communities. If you have an active community with an active school board, then problems in schools will be addressed right at source, because the people who care most about the quality of the schooling are the school kids themselves and their families. Another part of this is that we need to undo one of the key legacies of apartheid, which is that black people were trained under the previous system to think of themselves as inferior and incapable. And what we know from education theory, the very important part of learning is confidence in your ability to learn. So if you hit a hard problem and you lack that confidence, you just give up. And if you, on the other hand, do have that confidence that you can learn, you work through that hard problem, you discover how to solve it, and it's that particular aspect that during the Black Consciousness days we call psychological liberation, of converting your personal perception of your ability to a person
Sorry,
who can
Prof.
succeed.
Mechanic. What outcomes are we going to be actually getting from Agang in terms of what have you reconciled in your party?
Well, I mean, we, for a start, don't accept it at 30% as a pass mark. We think a minimum pass mark should be 50%. And by setting the bar higher, people will aim higher. Imagine if, for instance, you enter the 100-meter race in the Olympics and you think the standard is 20 seconds, you're not going to try very hard. If you know the standard is 10 seconds, you're going to train hard and get to that standard.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to our panelist from Unico.
Let me start by saying the education system in this country. I hear what you say, I hear people say, education system in this country has collapsed. There's no real education system to talk about. There was a trial and error from 1994 up to now. If you look at all the ministers that came, each one came with his own thing, trying to do a little bit of what. That's why the United Congress believe that this education must be completely overhauled. That's the first thing. You need a proper infrastructure, not only in certain parts of the country, in the whole country. You need to make sure that even educators are properly trained.
Okay, so can we just ask, how are we going to make sure that this is done?
Well, the first thing I'm saying, there must be free compulsory education.
Okay.
That's number one. And number two, proper schools must be built. This excuse of that we inherited this from the apartheid, who does not know that? But it's 20 years now. We need to build proper schools in the rural areas, which is not there. But also what you need to make sure that schools are properly equipped. They've got laboratories, they've got libraries, and prepared to make a child ready to go to the field. Today's, this thing, of course, like I say, there's no education. That's why we talk about complete over the 30% pass. You are creating people who are not even employable. And as a result, the productivity of this country has gone down. That is why we say we need to make sure that we create proper schools.
Okay, thank you very much. And finally, we're going to hear a response from the ACDP.
Education, the ACDP is committed to quality education, and quality education also has to be accessible, so that is vitally important. It is one thing to speak about the infrastructure, it's important. You do need schools and you do need a situation where it's an environment that's conducive to learning. But without teachers who are properly trained and skilled and also passionate about teaching, we're not going to get the results that we need. So teachers have to be the focus. We've come through a lot of things over the last 20 years, and one of the attacks had in fact been in terms of teachers training colleges, and we have to make sure that our teachers training colleges are expanded and are focused on giving us the results that we actually need. We also need to make sure that teachers are not held back in terms of their professionalism in the work that they do. And whereas unions are meant to actually assist teachers to be the best they can be, apart from actually also getting what they deserve in terms of...
Can I just interject here, MP Dudley? We kind of need resources for these students to also learn, so that's also part of the teaching process. So how then can we get a response from the ACDP about getting resources into classrooms?
Well, resources, at a national level, obviously we have a constitutional issue here that whilst budgets can be decided at a national level in terms of what they need to address at a provincial level, we have the issue that provinces, once that money goes in a lump sum to provinces actually can spend that money on whatever they want to spend it on. So it becomes very difficult for national to hold provinces accountable. That has to be addressed. And it is not an easy issue to address because, as I say, it is a constitutional issue. There has to be also no excuses in terms of, for example, textbooks being delivered right to the school. Where there's a breakdown, and there are breakdowns in provinces, but where there are those breakdowns, we have to have the political will to deal with those provinces and what is in place in the provinces to make sure that those blockages are not there.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so please stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Interested in OppiTV? Here's how to watch us online. Jump onto the oppidanpress.com in your web browser. Click the OppiTV tab and enjoy our wide range of video content on demand.
Act natural, everybody. I'm busy doing that.
Watch OppiTV.
Watch OppiTV.
You're watching OppiTV.
Welcome back. We remind you to please use the hashtag OppiDebate to tweet into studio. South Africa still spends a consistently large portion of its budget on education, and the NSFAS allocation for tertiary study was tripled to 9 billion in 2013. However, there is still a problem of access for young students. Grahamstown recently saw protest action by students at the East Cape Midlands College regarding the lack of funding for their students. With a growing demand for tertiary education, NSFAS has seen a national deficit of 2.6 billion rand, leading to many new students being denied funding for the 2014 academic year. Our question to our panelists is, what kind of strategic planning and projections would we see from you to address the growing demand from entry-level students? And we're going to start off with the UDM.
Can you just repeat the last part of the question? What?
Okay, so we are really looking at strategic planning and projections for the increasing demand of entry-level students.
Entry-level, tertiary?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thanks very much for the question. What needs to be done in the Eastern Cape, and particularly where you need to advance the cause of tertiary education in the context of strategic planning, is the following. You need to look at what education will address in the context of what will drive the economy of the area. That's the first thing. Then you strike a partnership or relationship, which can be translated to a partnership with the relevant industries. And secondly, you can also, the third thing that you can also do is to make sure that you have got the relevant budget, because without the relevant budget, you won't be able to attract the quality teachers, as well as make sure that the students are well equipped to do what needs to be done in the classroom. Those are the four essential things. The last thing that you would need to do in the context of strategic planning is to make sure that the students qualify for free tertiary education based on excellent performance, and that will encourage those students who can do that well to excel.
Okay, so I think the issue here is really, how are we going to plan for the students that are coming into university? So there's an increasing demand, and we see that we are under deficit. How is the UDM going to make sure that plans are put in place?
Number one, we do not have to address particularly the issue of the increasing number of students that want to come to university. What has happened in the past is that going to university has been so popularized that even students who actually do not need and do not have the mental capacity to go to universities are striving to get to universities. That's the first thing. So we'll not be driven like robots under UTM. We'll say how to address the problem, the impact of the problem, rather than to say, yes, we have to. So we'll divert some of the students to another form of education.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd now like to hear a response from the DA panelist.
Let me start by saying that no student with the desire or ability to attend tertiary education should be excluded purely on the basis of finance or lack thereof, or their educational background. That's a starting point that we need to take into consideration. And right now, a lack of financial resources and insufficient financial aid for students are seen as important constraints in all forms of post-school education. Now, while the National School Financial Aid Scheme is helping many students to fund their studies, there's a shortfall that you've identified of 2.5 billion. In fact, we predict that the shortfall could be as high as 6 to 7 billion rand. And the DA has produced an alternative budget that budgets 16 billion rand specifically to provide financial aid for students. To ensure that the school leavers, job seekers, and those wishing to upgrade their skills are not prevented or discouraged from obtaining the skills they need to succeed, a DA government would encourage the use of skills levy funding for both short courses and long-term studies at universities and further education and training colleges. We would expand the assistance provided through NSFAS and implement current proposals to make the funding for the full cost of study available as loans to poor students, which can be converted on successful conclusion of the study. And then we would provide state sureties for students who do not qualify for NSFAS bursaries, but are seeking student loans from commercial banks. Lastly, we would allow students seeking to study towards qualifications in areas of the public service to repay loans through providing public service. In other words, work in government providing a service to pay off their bursary.
So this seems like excellent solutions, but how viable are all of the solutions that you've brought up?
As I said, the DA produces, every year we produce an alternative budget that is based on the revenue projections and the expenses required to meet the necessary programs of that budget. And we have fully budgeted 16 billion rand specifically for NSFAS in that budget.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd now like the member from APC to respond to this question.
Okay, well, we have 10 billion rands for education, and we're giving free bursaries for students, but not only for college students or university students, but also on high school students, so that they may be able to continue with their education.
Okay, so we're just more looking at the sort of strategic planning and projections that you're going to deal with in terms of the demand that's rising.
Well, what can I say? Okay, we want to make sure that everybody gets education, as we all know that. But we are still discussing what can we do to improve that.
Is that your final answer? Okay, thank you very much, and we will now ask the representative from COPE to give us a response.
Okay. First of all, COPE is saying that education is a right and not a privilege, and any child must be educated. We talked about deficit in the budget, and as we did research as COPE, we found that actually the deficit on the budget, mainly the challenges are that most of the money is paying salaries for workers. I can quote about 38% of the budget go to pay workers, staff. And also we think that the supply chain management also is not strong enough in order to manage the budget. And therefore we're saying that as COPE, we must make sure that the supply chain management, where tenders are given, where corruption happens, we must monitor. And also to play a very, very strict oversight over the funding.
I think the issue again is that there's an inevitable increasing demand on our resources. So how are we planning ahead? How are we making sure that these students that are coming in bigger numbers are effectively catered for?
Definitely, the numbers are increasing because even the population of the country is increasing. And therefore we need really to look at how to make that. The private sector, for instance, has to play a role, and the government must work hand in hand with the private sector to make sure how do we grow the economy of the country, and also the matric students must have the opportunity, must be given information on how and on what subjects they can take, career guidance, and all those.
Okay, thank you very much. We are now going to be shifting the conversation to the topic of unemployment. Here are some thoughts from students on this topic.
If the current government isn't working hard enough to decrease that employment, how bad the employment is, then I think there should be a change in power. Because I mean, there are a lot of opportunities out there. It's just that opportunities aren't being taken by people because they're so busy trying to make their own wealth bigger instead of trying to help the people who don't have any wealth. So I feel like that should be addressed very quickly.
I think that in South Africa we have a lack of job opportunities. I know a lot of people, a lot of the youth have degrees, but a lot of them are sitting around doing nothing. And I think that in the coming elections and after the elections, the government should do everything possible to have more job opportunities for everyone in South Africa.
In this upcoming elections, I hope people will focus on such issues besides education and focus on creating more jobs and growing the economy, and hopefully, choose a party that will be able to, drive that forward, be it with policies or new legislation passed, but as long as, there's a political party that is focused on creating more jobs.
There are a number of contributing factors to the high levels of unemployment in this country, one of them being the structural problem that we inherited from the apartheid economy, which relied on spatial design to enforce segregation, which meant that poor people lived and still live outside of economic centres. We would like to ask our panellists what kinds of policies or programs are in place to deal with this problem, and secondly, how can we be guaranteed that enough experience and skills can be gained by young people to ensure their continued employability? We will start our session off with the member from DA.
Thank you. South Africa has an unemployment crisis, and particularly a youth unemployment crisis. Of the 3.2 million unemployed people in the country, 70% of them are younger than 35. So one solution that we have fought long and hard for, and it was only adopted last year, was the youth wage subsidy. Now, the idea behind the youth wage subsidy was to incentivize the hiring of young people into the workforce, to give them the skills and experience that they need. Because one of the biggest complaints is when I go for a job interview as a young person, the employer says, well, have you got 3 years experience? And the answer is invariably no. So this program is designed to give the employee, the young person, the experience and skills they need. How it works is that government subsidizes the wages, not in full, a third of the wages of a young employee. And so the cost of business in hiring that person is then lower because government is partially paying their salaries. Businesses would then be incentivized to hire these inexperienced workers. Not only will it lead to a direct increase in youth employment, but the work experience of each beneficiary means that they acquire skills that they can use in the broader employment market.
Sorry, so what kind of retention rates do we actually get from these young people that are then being employed?
In places where it has worked, and there are 48 countries around the world where this has been adopted, it has resulted in significant reductions in in youth unemployment. Singapore is an example, United Kingdom where unemployment fell between 5 and 11%, Chile where they created 115,000 jobs in 5 years, Argentina where 50% of the participants in the program became permanently employed. And here in South Africa, in the Western Cape, where the DA is in government, a version of the youth wage subsidy has been in place since 2009, and 70% of the participants have been retained as permanent employees.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd now like to move on to the ANC.
Thank you very much. I want to say clearly here, I'm listening to all what the other parties are saying, but here I'm telling you about what we are doing right now. As the ANC government, as we speak, we have said, let us reopen the colleges because we see that we need more teachers in order to address the issues of unemployment. 2, we have opened many colleges around even here in the Eastern Cape, even here in Grahamstown, for training nurses, that is health workers. 2, we are saying we are opening up centers to train artisans so that we make sure that we diversify the employment so that young people can be all over in order to get the work.
Sorry, so I think the same question here is how sure are we that these young students or these young people are going to be retained in their places of employment? Because skills are fine, but we need to make sure that people have longevity in terms of their careers.
As the ANC government, as we speak, most of our departments have got internships so that we can make sure that young people, whilst they are learning, they are also trained. And when the employers are saying you need your 3 years experience, obviously because she's gone through internships in this department, they are able to get the employment. That's what we are doing right now.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd now like our member from Ahang to respond.
Yeah, so skills is an important part of job creation, but so is encouraging entrepreneurship. So on the skills area, we would abolish the wasteful CETA system, which absorbs about 6 billion rand a year, mostly in bureaucracy, and target that money directly to people who are in jobs where they lack the skills. So if, for instance, a large construction project needs 100 carpenters, being able to hire in 100 young people with no skills doesn't really fix the problem. Whereas if you can hire in 100 people and get government support to raise their skills to an appropriate level, then those same people will have the potential to not only be retained in that job, but to move on to other better jobs as they gain experience. In terms of entrepreneurship, we would institute local and regional hubs where people wanting to start a small business could come along and learn how to do things like get finance, how to do their taxes, how to do a business plan from people who actually had skill in small business, not from bureaucrats who are being paid large salaries and being given grand titles. Because a lot of the reason we can't afford to do these things properly in government now is government practices are so wasteful. And if you just look at the government's own figures, in the last financial year, 33 billion rand was lost to waste and corruption, which is one currently every 3 days. And if you look across the entire government in terms of issues like we have twice as many cabinet ministers, for instance, as the United States, a country with 6 times our population, there's an enormous amount of money being wasted that we should be retargeting to the critical concerns of job creation, skills development, and making it easier to start small businesses.
Sorry, Prof. Mechanic, would you institute the National Youth Wage Subsidy as a kind of platform?
No, we don't support subsidies of that kind. They're not sustainable. We'd rather spend that money on skills development, and obviously young people would be among the beneficiaries of that. But even older workers who are stuck in an entry-level job without the possibility of advancement would gain from that.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd now like to move on to our representative from the UDM.
Thank you very much. We have got a crisp 8-point plan for addressing unemployment as well as being sure that our economy spins. Number one, savings on the through better management of the budget. At the moment, we've got so many government departments. We don't need so many, so we'll save a lot there. Also, we'll create an environment which is conducive to manufacturing. But all of this will be preceded by an economic endeavor to make sure that all the citizens of South Africa have got a say in what is definitely biting in everybody's home. Our principle is that government must do more. We appreciate what has been done so far, for instance, in infrastructure, but you're going to need to have infrastructure that can help drive the economy. There's electrification, but people do not have electrical power to drive the economy. We'll empower communities through scaling them appropriately. We'll address and give more to SMMEs to make sure that they are able to stand on their own and be independent and productive communities.
Sorry,
and
so
lastly,
how
we'll have
do these skills correlate with an actual job and a long job at
Thank
that
you very
time?
much for the question. Simple. We'll increase our research budget to make sure that every year, there is research done to reflect how much or which skills are needed by the respective industries, and then we'll make sure that what is taught in the classroom is exactly what is needed by industry. That is exactly how Canada, we have managed to keep the unemployment below 4% or not more than 4% for so many years. And on top of that, we'll make sure that there are sector banks to make sure that there is no one who will be going to knock on the wrong door. People who need, funding for agriculture will go to the agricultural bank and so on and so on.
Okay.
And that's how we'll address it. That's the only plan that will work for South Africa. Vote UDM.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now be moving on to issues concerning gender and the abuse of women and LGBTI communities. Before we do, we'd just like to hear a few thoughts from our young students.
I think gender rights in South Africa are not taken seriously, and as a woman, I do not feel safe in South Africa.
Hi, I'm Shannon Lee and I'm from Durban. I'm going to talk about gender. I think the reason why gender violence is escalating in the way that it is because we're not really solving the roots of the problem. We're kind of solving the symptoms. I mean, someone who rapes and then goes to jail for a short while, I don't think is going to really change their behavioral pattern because it's deeper than that.
What I'd like to see is females in particular have the belief that they can come out and voice their concerns to both to police, to elder people in the community, to anyone, and not just keep everything contained within themselves.
This past weekend, we heard about the tragic passing of Rhodes female student Amanda Twei, which many have seen as being representative of the high levels of violence against the bodies of women in our country. Further to that, the continued instance of corrective rape within our communities demonstrates an ongoing violence against members of the LGBTI community. For us, this shows that questions of gender remain relevant to our socio-political context. Our question here is, what sustained interventions against the prevalence of this kind of violence have each of our respective parties made? We're going to start the discussion with the panelist from COPE.
Thank you very much. I think more awareness and education needs to take place, especially for male counterparts. We have seen a very few men being trained as gender activists. If we can really train our men so that they respect women and also know that they have got a role to play in order to stop violence against women and children. And also we need to really educate the police so that we can also have specialized teams to deal with the issues. And one of the issues that create crime and violence against women and children is drug and alcohol abuse. ECOPE is looking really forward to make sure that there's a decrease in the use of drugs and alcohol. Also, we must create a conducive environment for abused women, build shelters where they can be kept, children that are abused, children that are orphans, so that they are kept safe. And we are looking really at really establishing a very, very strong, safe environment for the citizens of South Africa.
Sorry, Ms. Blackie, are there any sustained interventions that we currently see from the party?
Well, not as such, but ECOPE has been with the government since 2009 and is working with other parties within the government. So it's not only one party that works within the parliament. It's more of the parties, and COPE is one of those parties that work with the other parties in the parliament. So yes, it has made some inputs and some contributions.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd now like to hear a response from the panelist from the ACDP.
Thank you. Violence against women and children is a serious concern in South Africa, but violence in general is, just as much as crime in general is. And crime has to be dealt with, and it has to be dealt with immediately. There is a sense in South Africa that you do get away with crime, and crime pays. That this has to be moved, and the only way to move that is for people to be apprehended and to be taken before a court and actually sentenced. And that sentence has to be something that, in fact, is something people don't want. You know, in South Africa, going to jail is not such a big deal. South Africa, for a lot of people, is actually a place where you get shelter and food more than what our average citizens or a huge significant number of people are getting. So it is not a huge deterrent. So we do have to actually have sentences that fit the crime.
Sorry, which kind of stances are you taking on the violence on LGBTI communities? How do we remedy that?
Well, you know, the starting point for the ACDP would be that if we don't value human life, it is very unlikely that human rights are going to be valued the way they need to be valued. We do have to begin with valuing human life. And we have a large problem with legislation in South Africa that allows for just the indiscriminate killing of unborn children. We would like to see the lives of preborn children protected in the Constitution. Now, obviously, that is a starting point, valuing life. Every life is important, and no matter what people's sexual choices are, every life is important, and everybody's rights need to be protected, and the African Christian Democratic Party would be very serious about protecting the rights of all citizens.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd now like a response from the APC.
As well, all know, women and child abuse is very, we all know South Africa is a very country where women and child abuse is. You know what I mean. You know? So we as APC, we've created a campaign where women and children also, both, let me just put it this way, where both genders, whether male or females, are educated. And we have serious, we have serious issue where gays and lesbians are so discriminated. So we've created a campaign where that will end. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And finally, can we please have a response from the panelist from UNICO?
Thank you very much. The issue of violence against women and children is a very, very serious problem in this country. And I wouldn't like to say there were no attempts to deal with it. There was the Domestic Violence Act, which was, amongst other things, aimed at bringing the levels of violence against women and children down. But unfortunately, recently, as early as last year, we discovered that the police in this country have not been able to implement the Domestic Violence Act as it was supposed to be. That's number one. Number two, the attitude even of the police when people go and report issues of domestic violence, say, but go and sort out your family problems. It should be stopped, and it can be stopped. You need to make sure that you've got police men and women who are properly trained to deal with violence against women and children.
So what kind of sustained interventions would we get from UNICO?
One, we will make sure that the police are properly trained. And second, the issue of human rights, which is one of the biggest challenges facing this country. We must make sure that human rights are taken very serious on top of the agenda. We really worried, and we send our condolences to the parents of the students that have been killed recently. And we believe that once we have got police who act very, very strongly against any abusers, but also UNICO believes that the issue of dealing with crime cannot only be the issue of the police alone. The communities, the members of UNICO must make sure
thank you
that
very much.
we stop violence against women.
Okay, thank you very much. After the short break, we'll have questions from our studio audience, so please stay with us.
Hello, we're Melna. You're watching OppiTV.
This is Canterbury Annex, and you're watching OppiTV.
This is Graham House.
This is Graham House, and you're watching
OppiTV. Sincerely ask OppiTV.
We are Ruth First, and you're watching OppiTV.
This is Jan Smarthouse reporting for OppiTV.
We're Rosa Parks, and you're watching OppiTV.
We're watching OppiTV.
OppiTV. Let's go.
Interested in OppiTV? Here's how to watch us online. Jump onto the oppidanpress.com in your web browser. Click the OppiTV tab and enjoy our wide range of video content on demand.
Okay. Thank you very much for sticking with us and for the fruitful discussions thus far. For the following portion of our debate, we would like to invite the in-studio audience to pose questions to our party representatives. Thereafter, each party will have an opportunity to give a closing address. Audience, please remember to keep your questions as brief as possible and to direct them exclusively to one particular party. We will initially take 2 questions from the audience in studio, then draw 1 question from our social media stream, which has been coming in from Barrett. Okay, so we are going to start on the left-hand side, and if anyone can just indicate if they have any questions from this side. Okay.
Okay, my name is Kanisa Temba, President of the Gender Action Project. My question is directed to the ACDP. What policies do you already have in place that promote the rights of the LGBTQIA community and issues around gender-based violence in this country?
Okay. Well, yeah. Sorry, can we have just one more question from this side? Okay, thank you, Declan.
Evening, I'm Declan Williamson, a representative of the Rhodes Debating Society, and this question is it's aimed at the representative of the DA. And in seeing how that there's a clear drive for employment, to facilitate employment in South Africa. One of the main things that's come up in your manifesto is this drive to facilitate broad BBBEE in order to help facilitate employment and the like. There's been some sort of confusion in the past with regards to the DA's stance on this. Could you please maybe provide some clarity towards that?
Okay, and finally for our Twitter question, I think this is directed to the ANC. Did you overcome apartheid, or rather, you did overcome apartheid, but why should that be the only reason we should vote for you? We need to focus on the future now, and I imagine this is more a critique, but also a question in part. So we're going to start with the representative from the ACDP.
Well, the ACDP does not believe that we should be differentiating between people and genders, because crime is crime. Whether crime is happening to women or children or to men, it is crime, and it needs to be dealt with. It needs to be dealt with seriously, it needs to be dealt with swiftly, and it needs to have the relevant repercussions. And when it comes to people's sexual persuasions, again, we don't believe it's necessary to differentiate. What is necessary is that if a crime is committed, that it needs to be dealt with. People need to know that they cannot get away with abusive behavior, whether it is towards a person with one particular sexual persuasion or another, or whether they're a male, female, or child.
Would the Ahang respondent like to respond to the ACDP?
Yeah, I think one thing that we need to do is to make the general public aware that things like sexual orientation are generally not a choice. It's just the way you are. And for that reason, it's a clear human rights issue when people are disadvantaged, let alone being treated with violence because of their sexual orientation. And particularly, I find it very problematic that our government has done so little about the violence against gay people in other parts of Africa and some of the very unjust laws in countries like Uganda. And leadership from the top is essential in this sort of issue.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd now like to hear from the DA candidate about employment.
The question was about the DA's stance on broad-based black economic empowerment, and let's call it the flip-flop that happened when this legislation was introduced in Parliament. Let me say that the DA supports broad-based black economic empowerment that uplifts disadvantaged individuals. We do not support BBBEE that enriches cronies, cousins, and cadres, which is the way it's being implemented right now. The legislation was amended at the last minute to raise the ceiling at which people qualify for BBE benefits from 20 million rand to 50 million rand. So if you had received BBEE shares in a company to the value of 20 million rand as an ANC member, because let's be honest now, that's where it comes from, you now qualified to get another 30 million rand, up to 50 million rands worth of BBEE benefits. And that's not empowering the broad population of South Africa. So we see this as a broader base than what it is currently being implemented. We see it as a way of empowering citizens of South Africa. One of the things that we propose in our manifesto is dismantling the state monopolies, particularly Transnet, Eskom, SAA, etc., and distributing those shares to ordinary South African citizens to allow them to be empowered, to allow them to participate in the economy. That's BBBEE at a macro level.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we'd like to hear from the ANC.
The question from
the Twitter question, and I think it was really a critique about...
yes, no, I understood the question. No, we are not saying people must vote for us because we have dismantled apartheid, that is all. We have provided people with houses here that were not having houses. More than 16 million people have got free houses. Throughout in this world, there's no government that is giving houses free of charge to people. But here in South Africa, the ANC government is doing that because we know where we're coming from. Millions of people didn't have access to clean water. But today, millions of people, more than 90% South Africans, have access to clean water. They are no longer drinking with cows. Today, we are saying millions of people have access to electricity, which they didn't have before. Hence, we are saying vote for us because we are still going to do more.
Okay, thank you.
We have done everything.
Thank you, sir.
All these political parties are just bringing you their wish lists.
All right, thank you, sir. Would the UDM respondent like to respond to the ANC?
Thanks for the opportunity. The ANC was set up as a liberation movement, and their whole mentality is still at that level. We have gone past that stage. Okay, they've tried to upgrade to the extent that they poorly could do by just giving people basic services, and they're struggling to get out of that mentality. And that's why they're losing ground every second. And the UDM is the party that is committed, because of its political position in political space, to say government must do more. And this is what the ANC is unable to even think of, let alone, conceptualize.
Okay.
And we will do more to improve the lives of the South Africans. So vote UDM.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd now like to move on to the right-hand side. Do we have any questions from the studio audience? Okay, so we have two in the front. We'll start off with Taryn. Can you just get the microphone behind you?
Hi, I'm Taryn from Politics at Oppidan Press. My question is to the ANC. You, in your policy document on the National Youth Wage Subsidy, you emphasize very strongly the creation of skills. And this, I feel, has produced an education system that is lacking substance, and as one of the other candidates has said, created students who are unemployable. So what I want to know from you is, do you foresee policy changes that resolve this issue?
Okay, and Bradley?
Thank you very much. My name is Bradley Benzie. I'm the president of the SRC, and my question is also for the ANC. And basically, we all know that corruption is a major plague to our country, and I would like to hear from you, sir, how are you going to address the matter of ethical leadership and practices in the government if you are re-elected?
Okay, and then our second Twitter question is, people are responding on Twitter about gender issues. This question is for a Hang respondent. Why, if your candidate is a woman, do you have so little about gender rights in your policies? We're going to start with the question about the creation of skills, which was directed to the ANC.
Oh, yes. We are saying it is very, very important to make sure that once we train young people and they've got skills, they will be able to free themselves. But equally, we are saying, whilst we've got these policies, in direction, hence we are calling in Dabas from time to time. Hence we are saying it is important for young people, particularly students, to be part and parcel of the debate around how best can we take young people out of unemployment. So it's not a matter that we are saying just train people, but we are saying people must participate, must inform our policies in order that we can make sure that we change their lives.
Okay.
That's what we are saying.
Can we please have the UNICO panelists respond maybe to the ANC?
Well, Firstly, I want to just to correct the ANC. Probably their memories letting them down. It's not only the ANC people that have liberated this country. Many South Africans. I'm not talking about what I've heard. I'm talking about what I was practically involved at. Many South Africans, some of them, their names were not even mentioned. I used to hide cadres in various parts of this Eastern Cape, in houses of people who are not even known to have ever been involved in struggle. That's the question. The second question is the corruption. There is no way, as this thing stands now, that the ANC is going to address corruption, because corruption is endorsed. Even the mechanisms of dealing corruption are flawed. If you, lady, you find just one example, you found having stolen something, the case to deal with your case, it takes 3 years, and in that 3 years you are paid. I'm saying, therefore, if on the issue which was raised about education,
Skills.
the ANC must realize that you cannot solve the problem of unemployment, even all of us here, by just doing what is called a reformist. You need to make sure that manufacturing, which has gone down.
Okay, so I'm going to have to
Manufacturing
cut
and
you down.
industrialization.
Okay, thank you very much. We then move on again to the ANC, and the question was from Bradley about corruption.
If you go to our manifesto, we are clear about fighting corruption. In fact, it is the government of the ANC that has spoken out about corruption, which has engulfed this country over years. We are dealing with that now. Many, for instance, you will be told about the Department of Health here in the Eastern Cape. How many people have been fired in that department? Only this year. Senior managers which were involved in corruption. So we are dealing with corruption at all levels. Those which are found guilty by the court of laws or by the department when they are charged, they are fired from this government.
Okay.
It's not true that we are not dealing with corruption.
Sorry, sir. I think the question again was really framed around Ngandla and the kind of conversation that we're having in South Africa about that. Do you have any response as the ANC panelists today?
The Ngandla saga, you want me to respond on Ngandla?
Yes, please.
The issue of Ngandla is being dealt with. There's SIU, which is dealing with the Ngandla issue right now, which is investigating. Two, there's a committee in Parliament which is responding to that response which has been given there. And yes, that's how we're dealing with.
All right. I'd just like to say that as far as I know, the Ngandla committee was actually stripped of their powers yesterday, but can we just have the DA's response?
The thing with the corruption is that the ANC has a culture of corruption. It is corrupt from the head down. We have a president who has 783 charges of corruption hanging over his head. He has not answered for in a court of law, and he dodges the bullet every time. He hasn't yet produced the spy tapes despite 3 court orders to do so. He refuses to do so. The Nkandla committee was disbanded yesterday because the ANC used its majority to force the issue out, to say, we're not going to debate this now because they're worried about an election. In the meantime, on the ANC election lists, you've got people who are corrupt. You've got the John Blocks, the Humphrey Mamezis, the Dina Poules, who are sitting in high positions on the ANC list. If the ANC was serious about corruption, they would not put those people on their list.
Okay, thank you very much. And the final question was directed to the Ahang, and I think that was really speaking about LGBTI transformation, if I think it was.
Yeah, I think the question was why don't we have detailed policies on these issues? And as a new party, without very much time to prepare for the election, we had to make a strategic decision to have a very limited set of policies up on our website. So if anyone wants to see what we really stand for on this issue, I would suggest you just search for media statements we've issued when these issues have come up. And we're a party of strong women, and we're very much a human rights-oriented party, so we're not going to be weak on these issues. But at the same time, we're not going to write extremely rushed policies without having time to work them through properly. So, search for Akang, gender issues, Mpela Rampela. She's a person who's worked with the poorest of the poor in deep rural areas for 15 years of her life. She understands exactly where these issues come from. So we're not weak on these things. It's just a matter of having the time to frame these policies as well as we'd like to.
Okay, does the ACDP panelist have a response to your help?
Well, yes, every one of the ACDP's policies are actually geared towards women and men. And every one of them takes into consideration the things that are affecting women and men and the empowerment of women. You know, empowering women is more than just simply putting some legislation in place that talks about having a particular quotas, which in fact can ultimately disempower women. Empowering women means that they need to be able to access jobs where they can earn the kind of money they need to look after their families. That's important. The economy has to be such that it actually draws investment into the country, and that we can actually have investment in our rural areas where women will be able to access those jobs. It is also schooling for their children. It's a roof over their heads. It's daycare for children when they're working.
Thank you very much. We'd like to take some more questions here on the right. So we have 2 hands up here. So the first is the gentleman with the cap and the lady at the back. Okay, so who has the mic? Here we go. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Siyabonga Jam from the South African Students Congress, SASCO.
Sorry, can you just speak slightly louder?
Oh, my name is Siyabonga Jam from SASCO. The comment that I would like to make first is that Eastern Cape is a former Bantustan. That must be taken into consideration whenever there is an issue around the issue of mud schools. But it is the ANC government that has said, let us accelerate the eradication of mud schools. The question is directed to the UDM. Is the UDM contesting national elections or the province of the Eastern Cape? Because we are continuously hearing you talking about what you're going to do in the Eastern Cape. Or is reality kicking in that you will never govern this country? Thank you.
Okay, and we'll like the second question.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Lindsay Kelland. I'm from WASA, which is the Women's Academic Solidarity Association. My question is for the ACDP candidate. I wanted to find out, you've been talking about empowering women and about family values and Christian values and human rights for everyone. And I wanted to know what your stance was on the Termination of Pregnancy Act, because that is crucial to empowering women in our country.
Okay, thank you very much. And our third Twitter question is, what will the ANC do differently about sexual abuse? Okay, so we are going to start off with the UDM panelist.
Okay, thanks very much for that question. The reason we've been putting so much emphasis on the Eastern Cape is because we briefed that the debate would be premised primarily around the Eastern Cape. That was the brief, and I've kept to that. Maybe different from everybody else. But we are definitely contesting in all the provinces except the Northeastern Cape. The Northern Cape, sorry. We are contesting in all the provinces. We are playing a critical role in that Marikana massacre. In fact, our president will be there with the miners tomorrow. That's national. Currently, our secretary has been deployed there since the beginning of the election. He's been in Northwest Africa, in Northwest, right through the time, making sure that he is there with those miners as they are suffering in the hands of the ANC government. So we are there. In Gauteng, we've got a strong presence because a lot of people working in Gauteng come from the Eastern Cape, which is the home of the UDM. Our economic policies address all issues pertaining to the broader South African economy. We are not confining ourselves to the Eastern Cape, but we are saying that we want to make sure that Holomisa becomes the premier of the Eastern Cape. We make no bones about it because the people have asked for it before we, even as the UDM asked, put that question to him or that suggestion to him. It's people, funny enough, and I dare say this in the presence of the ANC, it's some of the top guns from the imploding ANC who approached Holomisa and say, we cannot control this situation. And it's not the first time, because when Zuma was being chased around the union buildings by the army in 2009, he asked our Holomisa to solve the problem, and he stepped in. He's still deputy president of that national
Okay, so we're going to need you to wrap up.
The problem. So we are South African based. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Would the COPE panelists like to respond to that?
I think the UDM is quite right when they say that you will, of course, focus on where you are, whereas you are contesting the country, the whole country, that is the national elections. And for me, where I am, I can make a difference. And I know that those I can make an example where I am, so that for the broader spectrum of the country, people can be able to see what I do. Secondly, I think the ANC must stop taking gains by themselves, because the ANC is not the only party that is doing the work of the country. There are a number of political opposition parties in parliament who are doing a lot of work, a lot of good work, and the ANC, because of their numbers, they stop the gains of other parties, because immediately there's an issue that they cannot address, they will say that let's go to vote. And I've got an experience even in the Makana municipality. Immediately as an opposition party, you bring something, even the corruption of the ANC councillors, ANC officials, they could say that let's go to vote, because they've got, they depend on only numbers, but less action on what they are saying. And the constitution of that's why COPE is saying it will defend the constitution of this country and the freedom of this country, because the ANC abuses the constitution of the country.
Okay, the second question that we got from our studio guest was to the ACDP about the Termination Act.
Well, of course, it's no secret that the ACDP would like to see the rights of a preborn child to life protected constitutionally. And we believe that it's important that those rights would be balanced against other rights. We did, in fact, put a private member's bill and a proposal forward for that, which all parties ignored and voted against. At a later date, we had brought an amendment to the choice on termination of pregnancy in recognition of the facts as they are today, and really actually aiming at informed choice for women as opposed to what they have at the moment. And that was targeting really the area of counselling, because there is a mention of counselling in the legislation as it stands, but it's not mandatory, and it can say anything. For example, the counselling could be, that's a lump of tissue, you must get rid of it, or it can be something where you can have a scan and be aware of the development that's taking place within yourself. So we would like to see those sort of changes.
Okay, we have heard very little from the APC. Would you like to respond with regards to that question? Okay, no, thank you. All right, so we have a fourth Twitter question, and that is, what are the chances of South Africa's being led by a woman in the near future? DA, who is your presidential candidate?
Well, that's a very easy answer. Our presidential candidate is Helen Zille. The chances of South Africa being led by a DA woman are very good, because we have DA women in senior leadership positions. We have Helen Zille as our federal leader, we have Lindiwe Mazibuko as our parliamentary leader, we have Patricia de Lille as our mayor of Cape Town, and a number of our premier candidates are women. I just want to say, though, that if you contrast that to the ANC, who has a very strict quota-based gender policy, the ANC Women's League, the head of the ANC Women's League, Angie Motshekga, said that South Africa is not yet ready for a woman president. Now you have to ask, is this a country that is committed, is this a party that is committed to women's issues? Is this a party that is committed to ensuring that we have a woman leader in this country one day? We are. We absolutely are.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for that. We are reaching the end of our debate. But before we close, we would like to allow each party 1 minute to give a closing statement. So can we please start off with the UDM?
Thank you very much for the prime position, because we're bringing the Eastern Cape the best premier candidate. Holomisa is clean. Holomisa has experience in leading a region. Holomisa is the man of the moment. Holomisa has been agreed upon by more than just two parties, that is the ANC, the imploding ANC, and the UDM, from which it comes. After debates time and time again down in East London, people come to me and say, Filtana, we're just debating. We actually want Holomisa to lead the province. And the man is clean, he's capable, he's forthright, and people just are yearning for him. So vote UDM and make Holomisa the premier. That's it. Thank you.
Can you please get a closing statement from the APC?
Okay. vote for APC because we can do a lot more and change a lot of things that is happening in South Africa. And we can also deliver services, save lives and property, and properly manage public funds. So vote for APC.
Okay. From the DA.
The Democratic Alliance is the only party that has grown in every election since 1994. We have a history of delivering. Where we govern better. Our province is the best run province in South Africa. The municipalities we govern are the best run municipalities in South Africa. That's not us talking, that's the ANC government nationally talking. Together we can ensure that every child receives a better education, that every deserving student is fully funded for tertiary education, that young people can get internships, work experience, and ultimately that every adult has an opportunity to work. Together we can build a country to be proud of. In this election, you have an opportunity to shape our future for the better. Lend us your vote for 5 years. You will not be disappointed. Vote for the Democratic Alliance.
Okay, so we'd like a final closing statement from the UNICO.
The United Congress is a very newly founded party, but is founded on serious basic principles. One, to defend and advance the revolution which many South Africans died for. We want to make sure that there is proper education, because without proper education, this country is not going to go anywhere. And we don't talk about reforming, because all what I heard here is about how to reform this education that is collapsed. It cannot work. We want to make sure that we've got a proper health system that has also collapsed. You go to hospitals now, there are no medicines, sometimes there are not even food, no linen, and everything is collapsed. Our clinics,
okay, we need to wrap up.
Our clinics, we must make sure that our clinics are open for 24 hours. The last thing, we vote for UNICO to make sure that we fight and destroy corruption, which is a big cancer that is destroying our country.
Okay, thank you. So can we please have the respondent from Agang?
Yeah, so democracy is not just about voting. It's also about how we behave from day to day. In a truly democratic society, citizens are active. They don't wait for the government to do everything. And a big problem we've had, both under apartheid and since, is that people expect the government to rule, whereas in fact the government should be serving us. So in areas like, for instance, dysfunctional schools, school kids could get together, form study groups, and then call in students and academics from their nearest university, which in our case is actually pretty close, to help them pull up their level of study. In dysfunctional societies where trash is not being collected, community members could decide enough is enough, buy trash bags which are not that expensive even for poor people, collect the trash and dump it at City Hall. So we need to get our citizens activated, not ruled over by government, but demanding that the government works for them.
Okay, thank you very much. And the final statement from COPE.
COPE is a party that really acknowledges women's capacities. And if you look at even in the list, in the candidate list of COPE, you can see that the majority are women. Because COPE is saying that women are the people who feel the pain of the community, feel the pain of the families. So if you can vote COPE, be sure that most of the challenges that are facing this country can be dealt with, because women are strong. Women have got the capacity to lead this country and also to manage the resources of this country. COPE is very, very interested to finish about corruption, to kill corruption. As the gentleman has said, that it is the cancer that is eating this country. Women are not corrupt. Men are corrupt. If the women, if women lead this country, if the COPE can lead this country,
Thank you very much, Ms. Blackie. Okay, and now we need the ACDP.
Is a vote for a smaller party a wasted vote? Now, the people who are spreading that lie were in fact a one-woman party for 11 years, and very recently were a 7-person party. So they would not be the significant number they are today if they had believed their own lie that a vote for a smaller party was a wasted vote. we are a diverse South Africa. With the best will in the world, we're not all going to be ANC or DA. We value our diversity. And in that, we have a multi-party democracy, which we are really proud of and which actually has helped us be in the situation that we're in today. You can vote your values, you can vote your principles, and you can vote for people who you can trust to do the job. The ACDP has a 20-year track record in Parliament, in provincial legislatures, and in municipalities where we have held ruling parties, including the DA, accountable, who have issues on transparency and autocratic issues just as much as any other party and any other government. They need to be held accountable as well.
Okay, and finally, our final respondent for the ANC.
I might get 2 minutes. Oh, thank you very much. I think it is reality that if you vote for people who are wishing to do things, some are still going to research for their policies. They are telling you here, forget about UDM. They've been going down and they're still going to go down. I forgot about COPE, forget about Ahang. Unique is something new. DA in Cape Town as we speak, because I'm there. People were fighting about the buckets in Cape Town. They are saying that is good governance.
Fighting here.
Buckets in Cape Town, they are saying that is good governance. The ANC is doing everything in front of you. We are fighting this corruption that we are talking about. And we are going to deal with it. Vote for the ANC so that we can improve what we've been doing over the past 20 years.
All right, thank you very much.
We've got a good story to tell.
Okay, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude our 2014 election debate. To our party representatives, we thank you so much for taking the time to answer the questions of the Grahamstown youth. To our in-studio audience, we thank you for representing the Rhodes students with such commitment. Thank you to all at the Barrett Lecture Theatre for contributing to the debate with your ongoing social media presence. And thank you to every member of Rhodes University and broader Grahamstown community who's engaged with our discussion this evening. For all of you who have registered to vote in this election, we hope that this session has given you a better sense of who to vote for. Thank you and good night.
What did you do with the 20 billion of 2010?
In 2014, we have one chance.
We came here defying them.
DA Cope will free from Canada in the election.
Taking the first right away, they will